Students, we shall continue. My youth is buried in Rover. Obachan's ghost visits a March gate. My niece haunts Tule Lake. Here again she tries to emphasize the feeling of loss by going back to her past, by saying that her youth was lost in Rover. I hope you remember the description I gave for Rover. Rover is the place where the Japanese American internment camp had functioned. It was located in rural southeastern Arkansas, which is a part of southern United States, and this concentration camp had started to function from 1942 to 1944, and it is said that as many as 9,000 Japanese Americans were confined in this particular camp. She also recalls some of her lost family members. Obachan is a Japanese word for aunt. Obachan's ghost visits Amage Gate. Now, Amage Gate is again another Japanese American internment camp located in southeast Colorado, and the camp is now considered as a National Historic Landmark as well. So this was again one of those concentration camps that were created by the administration under the leadership of Franklin Roosevelt following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. So she gives us a picture of the haunting memories of her family members. She continues by saying, my niece haunts Tule Lake. Tule Lake, again another internment camp. It's considered to be one of the largest and most controversial of the many internment camps that were established. And this was again a place where this policy of exclusion, discrimination was carried out in the most unjust manner. So let me continue. She next talks about how words are better than tears. So I spill them. I kill this, the silence. Okay? So the mood, the tone here is the same that we found throughout this stanza. That is how she proclaims that she doesn't want to remain silenced. She doesn't want to be considered as voiceless and passive, but rather as quite strong. She wants to express all her feelings that were lying dormant within herself. She doesn't want to hold those emotions of anger and rage, that strong sense of indignation within her any longer. That is why she concludes by saying that words are much, much better than tears. There is no use shedding tears, silently enduring everything that is forced upon you. You have to speak out. You have to speak against oppression. You have to raise a voice. Otherwise, you will continue to remain marginalized. So, here we find a strong affirmation of her strength and confidence. She wants to start life, as I said, in a new manner, in a hopeful manner. She feels that it is better to break the silence than to silently suffer. So I spill them. So I'm giving out. I'm letting out all those pent-up feelings, emotions, those feelings of frustration and pain. We now come to the final part of the poem. Let me read. There are miracles that happen, she said, and everything is made visible. We see cracks and fissures in our soil. We speak of suicides and intimacies, of longings lush like wet furrows, of oceans bearing us toward imagined riches. of burning humiliations and crimes by the government, of self-hate and of love that breaks through silences. Here the first lines remind you of the very beginning of this poem, where the author was speaking about certain miracles that happen, and she was obviously referring to the miracle of breaking silence. How silence is ultimately broken. And she adds here that now everything is made visible. We now speak of all our experiences, all our trials and tribulations, all our anxieties, worries, hopes, and aspirations. We speak about the spirit of oneness, the mutual love that we share, the love that has helped us to finally break out, to come out of our silences. So, we find her talking about her feelings of anxiety. In fact, not just her feelings of anxiety, but those of her community. She says, we see cracks and fissures in our soil. Now, what do cracks and fissures indicate? They indicate how the soil has become dry. They show that there is an urgent need for replenishment, for water, and water signifies revival, renewal, isn't it? So, these cracks and fissures, which came as a result of their forceful containment, brings to our mind the cessation of all their activity. Remember the work of her mother? Similarly, a number of other Japanese Americans would have worked hard trying to shape their lives. And suddenly, everything came to an end because of such a brutal order. All their work was bolted within barracks, isn't it? Because they were forced to leave their homes, taking only the basic necessities. She continues and says, we speak of suicides and intimacies, of longings lush like wet furrows, of oceans bearing us toward imagined riches, of burning humiliations and crimes by the government. She talks about how they speak about death. They speak about relationships. They speak about their own yearnings, longings, which are compared to wet furrows. That is, their growing desires are here compared to wet furrows, which again signify a sense of renewal and revival. I hope you know the meaning of furrows. They are small pathways that actually carry water to irrigate the crops. So from that image of dryness, from that image of lack and scarcity, she talks about the hope for luxuriant growth, for renewal and regeneration. There is also the indication that their yearnings exist just like wet furrows that lay a strong foundation for a good harvest. She continues, we speak of oceans bearing us toward imagined riches. Again, an image that talks about their hope for a prosperous future. Of burning humiliations and crimes by the government. This is again a part of their destiny. The fact that they were humiliated in the worst possible manner. They were subject to a lot of crimes. They were victimized by the administration. She says, We speak of self-hate and of love that breaks through silence. Yes, self-hate here again brings to our mind the feeling of inferiority that was inculcated in them by the authorities, by the society in general. They were made to hate their own selves. They were made to hate their bodies, their skin color, in fact, their whole heritage and identity. But now, they do not exist to hate themselves, but rather to love. To love not just their own selves, but the whole of humanity. And it is this recognition of love that enables them to break out of their silences, to express themselves powerfully and effectively. So, this power is manifested in the concluding lines of the poem. We shall see, we are lightning and justice. Our souls become transparent like glass, revealing tears for war-dead sons, red ashes of Hiroshima, jagged wounds from barbed wire. We must recognize ourselves at last. We are a rainforest of color. We are a rainforest of color and noise. We hear everything. We are unafraid. So, see how powerfully she has articulated her strength, her inherent strength, her energy, when she says that we are lightning and justice, indicating that they are powerful and they stand for justice. Now, our souls have become transparent. If you look into it, you can actually see the pain for the dead heroes of the past, for their dead heroes who became martyrs of war. You can see the innocent victims of the brutal atomic attack on Hiroshima, something that happened on August 6th. You can also see the torture that we were subject to in concentration camps. The jagged wounds from barbed wire, jagged wounds referring to rough wounds from barbed wire, again indicative of the brutality of concentration camps. So, let us move to the last lines. We must recognize ourselves at last. We are a rainforest of color and noise. We hear everything. We are unafraid. These last lines again reflect her strong confidence, her determination, her power, the power with which she is asserting herself. So it is a kind of an exhortation that says that we must recognize the inherent power contained within ourselves. And we have to assert ourselves, come out of silence, and declare that we are humans filled with vibrance, color, and energy, and not mute victims who cannot protest or revolt or speak. We hear everything. We are unafraid. Our language is beautiful. So she expresses the journey to her own self. It's a celebration of her own uniqueness, a celebration of Japanese American identity, and most importantly, the power of resilience. Therefore, the poem gives out this message to recognize your own strength, your own spiritedness, and to strive towards a sense of fulfillment and self-realization. You have to come out of your cocoon and raise your voice and make yourself heard. Okay? Thank you.